Sean here with BaseMint Comics, and one of my favorite comics to read every Halloween season is the Marvel graphic novel Doctor Doom and Doctor Strange Triumph and Torment, written by Roger Stern with art by Mike Mignola and inks by Mark Badger. Probably colors too, I'm gonna guess. So Hank and I are gonna hit a spooky evening ride, take a look at the decorations around the neighborhood, and then hit the trails, and then we will be back to read and talk about this. So let's hit the trails. So we are back from the ride, and I have read for years now, around this time of year, my favorite Doctor Strange and Doctor Doom story, Triumph and Torment. Written, like I said, by Roger Stern, with beautiful art by Mike Mignola and Mark Badger. I'm going to take off the dust jacket for this while I flip it around so that doesn't get cumbersome and damaged. It's got a cool little Doom crest on the inside of the hardcover. So this opens up with the aged Genghis talking to one of his apprentices about the first time that he ever came into contact with Doctor Doom, which happens to be around the same time that he came into contact with Doctor Strange. And so Doctor Doom shows up, with his scar and looking to seek out the mystic arts. And aged Genghis, he basically does not suffer any of aged Genghis's riddles, and basically Doom just fight. He's like, give me what I want, and then he beats the aged Genghis and takes off, because aged Genghis can basically tell, this really isn't for you, you're not who needs to be doing this. And so a few days later, Doctor Strange shows up and nurses Genghis back to health. And Doom winds up running into a group of sorcerers who he then becomes their masters, gets the Doom armor, and gets the mask. And so the narrator the apprentice is like, Genghis, is this true? And, he's kind of an unreliable narrator, little kooky, so on and so forth. So we can't, it's kind of written in a way where you're like, he's the narrator of this entire story, and you're kind of like, can we take this as truth, or is he messing it up a little bit? And so then Genghis takes off because every 100 years he heads to the Temple of the Three to hold a kind of a contest for the Vashante, which is Ogun. No. Ogun is Ashtur, Hogarth, and Agamotto, who make up the Vashante. And this contest basically pits a bunch of sorcerers against each other to figure out who is the Sorcerer Supreme. So Genghis sends out this message to all the mystics. You see them in the Yucatan, the island of Honshu, along the moors of Great Britain, in a subsea outpost of sunken Atlantis. And this is all obviously beautifully drawn by Mike Mignola. I think the moors of the Great Britain and the undersea sects of the undersea subsea outpost of sunken Atlantis are the most beautiful ones of those. And then it eventually reaches Latveria, where Doom is like basically like shushes some of his Doom bots and is like, I can kind of hear this, like I need to pay attention. And then Doctor Strange is awoken from his sleep thinking that he dreamed this message from the aged Genghis, and then realizes what it is. So instead of like traveling there mystically, he takes flight, gets a bus, gets on a boat. I'm assuming he does this in an effort to like save energy because he knows that the contest is had, but it never really explains why he doesn't just blip over there like everybody else does. So eventually he finds the Temple of the Three. Again, Mike Mignola and Mark Badger are crushing it. It looks like some of the backgrounds are done watercolor, which is just fantastic. So that's great. All the other sorcerers are very excited to see Strange, which is like fun to see. I kind of wish, I don't know, I don't have a ton of Atlantean knowledge. I haven't read a ton of Namor's solo series or anything, but I really liked the idea of there being an Atlantean Sorcerer Supreme. So I was kind of like hoping, you know, my buddy that lives next door to me, he's a big Namor fan, so maybe he'll know if there is a Atlantean Sorcerer Supreme, because I thought that was pretty cool. So he's introduced to all of them, and then Genghis starts to explain why they're all there, but then Doom shows up late, but does actually pay reverence to Genghis, even though Genghis is like, oh, you're a lot more mellow than the last time that we met. So they are then introduced to the trinity of Ashtur, Hogarth, and Agamotto, making up the Vashante, and they explain the contest that basically, like, we give you the greatest mystics to walk the earth, the chance to find among yourselves the sphere's Sorcerer Supreme, and if you become the Sorcerer Supreme, once that mage is found, a boon will be granted and lives will be changed. This we have seen. And so that's their kind of message about this. So one of the sorcerers kind of points at Doom and is like, the rest of us are sorcerers, but this guy also uses technology, and kind of calls out Doom, which, you know, probably a big mistake. So Doom basically is like, I don't need technology, and rips off his gauntlets and just works with sorcery. So aged Genghis is then kind of trapped in this crystal-like object by the Vashante, and it is up to the sorcerers to get him out. And some of them act rashly and wind up getting hurt pretty badly, and it winds up being kind of like all of them are getting attacked. It's fun to see kind of the, you know, beautifully colored, like just looks great. Winds up coming down to Doom and Steven winds up winning. And none of the other sorcerers are really surprised, because it had kind of been hinted during this point that Steven was the Sorcerer Supreme, or at least claimed to be. So no one is very surprised. So he gets granted the title of Sorcerer Supreme by the aged Genghis, and Stephen is like, but the title of this and the acknowledgement that I'm Sorcerer Supreme is enough. I don't need the boon. And Genghis is like, no, man, you misunderstand. Like, the Sorcerer Supreme does not receive, he must grant it to the person who was the other sorcerer who evaded the power of this like crystal, and that was Victor Von Doom. And so Strange is like, no, this guy's a dictator. He's crazy. Like, I'm not going to grant him anything. He's like, I don't want him to become ruler because I grant him this. And Doom has this kind of super cold line where he's like, you misjudge me, Doctor. I have no need to employ mysticism in matters of state. So he's basically saying, like, I don't need sorcerer powers to become ruler. Like, I'm Doom. But he's like, but there is one thing that I need from you. Shortly before her death, my mother's soul was fortified to an unholy demon. Ever since that day, her spirit has been held captive in an infernal netherworld, denied her lasting reward. Help me free her, and our account will be settled. So basically, Doom's mother has been, she was a sorcerer, and she's been sent to hell, and Doom has been racked with, obviously, like, I don't think, I'm sure there are some cases where there are probably people out there with not great mothers who would be okay with Mephisto toying with their mother for eternity. Doom is not one of them. So Stephen agrees, and the temple then kind of crumbles to be rebuilt in another 1,000 years. So Doom and Strange evade. They escape the temple as it's crumbling down around them, and then they head off to Latveria. And when they arrive, there's a big show of it. The Latverians come out, like little girls bring up flowers to Doom to express how appreciative of the fact that he's home. And Stephen in his head is like, I know this is all put on to show me. And then he heads to Doom's castle, and he's having dinner there and some wine, and Stephen is going over Cynthia Von Doom, Victor's mother's tomes, like her spell books and all that type of stuff in the study of Castle Doom. And basically he's incredibly impressed with he's impressed with the amount of knowledge contained in these tomes. So Doom kind of explains, like, I was little more than an infant when she passed. And, Stephen's like, are you ready to go to hell to battle for her? And, Doom is like, I'd do anything. And for his adult life, he has sought a way to free his mother. So as Doom is basically then like, you should probably go get some rest, like tomorrow on Midsummer's Eve. So technically the story takes place in June, so it should probably be a summer story for me. But the first time I read it was around this time period, and so it's sort of always stuck in this kind of like fall, spooky season kind of vibe for me. So as Stephen is leaving with Boris, one of the caretakers of Castle Doom, Stephen turns around and asks him, he's like, why, like, if this had been going on and you'd been trying so long, why wouldn't you just come to me and ask me for help? And it's again, like, this fantastic, like, Doom standing in front of a fire, doesn't even turn around, and he's like, I will bear any ordeal, Strange, but Dr. Doom does not beg. And so then as Strange walks with Boris to his room, he kind of gets the history of how in Latveria they were like ruled over by an awful baron. And so Cynthia had like started dabbling in the dark arts and basically was confronted by Mephisto and requested power. He granted this. She went to go attack the Baron and his guardsmen and wound up like casting a spell that killed them, but upon like exiting the building that she was in, where she had dispatched all of like the guardsmen, she realized that she had killed like all the children in the area, and like she could not handle this, obviously. And so as she was like breaking down from what she had done, because Mephisto had, like, that's the trick, like Mephisto granted her the power but none of the control. And so she winds up like sobbing, and one of the guardsmen, who was like badly injured but was able to get up, in the time that she was freaking out, winds up stabbing her. She makes her way back to her husband and little Victor, and dies in her husband's arms. So that is like, then her husband like chains up her trunk of like the arcane, dumps it in a river, but goes back. It's back. Like, this thing is sort of kind of haunting them. He tries and tries and tries to destroy it, while also fleeing the Baron, who's like, this woman killed a bunch of my guards, like wipe her family out. And so they're sleeping in the forest in the wintertime. The cold eventually kills Victor's father, Werner, but Doom survived, but blamed, obviously, the Baron and the rulers of Latveria at the time, or the community that he was in, for his death. And so he found his mother's trunk, opened it, started studying the mystic arts, started studying science. This is where he goes to college, meets Reed, has the lab accident, goes through his whole history. And again, I'm sure there are tons of people there that are super familiar with Hellboy and Mike Mignola's artwork. I've never read Hellboy, but I do love Mike Mignola's art. So this is a treat in and of itself. Doom eventually returns to see Boris and becomes ruler of Latveria. And so then it cuts to, like, weeks are passing as sort of Stephen kind of trains Doom in the mystic arts to travel to Hades. So then eventually on Midsummer's Eve, where the barriers between worlds are easily breached, they cast a spell and head down to Hell, Mephisto's realm. And they land there, and I believe this is the cover of the original graphic novel, but you are immediately met with this great page. Like, they just, Doom even remarks, like, could you have dropped us anywhere a little less crowded with demons? And Steven's like, it's unpredictable here, like, just get to it. And the two of them start battling demons. And then in another fantastic panel, like, Mephisto shows up and faces Doom and Strange, and this is where Doom is like, we demand a battle for the freedom of my mother's soul. And Mephisto laughs in his face, like, you don't demand anything in hell, Victor. And so they start to battle, and this kind of goes on for a bit. Obviously, the two of them are, Doom and Strange are separated at this point and battling in different areas of Mephisto's realm. And Strange is then battling a demon who kind of sends him on a memory journey where he is kind of back, and you see a little bit of Strange origin, which I'm sure most of us are familiar with, where, he was kind of a jerk doctor, and, mangled his hands, sought out the Ancient One. But in this, he realizes, like, he defeats the demon, and then Mephisto and Doom are discussing what the price would be for him to get his mother's soul back. And obviously it's a soul for a soul. So Strange is still fighting the demons, and he sees that Doom has been defeated by some of the other demons in the battle. Goes to touch him to revive him, but they switch places. And this is Doom's trick. He has now traded Doctor Strange's soul for his mother's. So his mother is awakened. She's kind of like pulled up from some molten lava formed into her body, and Mephisto is holding onto her soul and then like blows on it, and all of a sudden she is there, and she's like, holy smokes, can't believe that I'm alive. And Victor is immediately just like, we got to get out of here, like grabs her hand, starts tugging her away, and she's like, wait, and he's like, I managed to get you released from Hades. But she knows, like, this is Mephisto. You didn't just, like, you guys weren't like, no. And he's like, I'll do you a favor. I'll let your mom out. And so, he's like, oh, this was all part of the bargain. And she questions the bargain, turns around, sees Mephisto. He's laughing at her. And he's like, Mephisto would never free a soul unless, Victor, what have you done? And so he's like, only what was necessary. And so that's when Mephisto, because Victor's not going to tell her, like kind of taunts him from, where they ran from, and is like, he's gave me the Sorcerer Supreme to buy you a new life. And Cynthia Von Doom freaks out at this because she understands, like, she's been down there, and she's freaking out that Victor forfeited his own soul, to which, again, like, another, like, artwork's beautiful, like, so good. And then, Victor explains, had I 1,000 souls, I would gladly sacrifice them all for you. And he's begging her, which Doom does not do, as established earlier, like, please, let's just go. And she's like, I will not go with you. You're a traitor. That my son would betray another to Mephisto. You are no son of mine. And like, Victor's aghast at this. She's like, this is the worst damnation of all. Like, I've been trapped in hell since you were a baby, and knowing that you would bargain with this monster was worse than all of this torture that she's endured in hell. And there's a fantastic, like, as she says this, she gets turned back to stone in Mephisto's lair. And there is a fantastic panel of Doom sobbing at his mother's statuesque body. And so in this moment, like, Strange rages and realizes that he has a device that Doom created and planted on him, and that Doom's betrayal to Strange was a trick. And I've always loved this because it's so, like, it's totally in character for Doom, at the same time being completely out of character, because, like, this is how desperate Doom is to save his mother, that he is, like, willing to team up with someone that's, kind of unlike Doom, but it so fits within this story. So the two of them battle Mephisto. It doesn't go great because it's Mephisto in his own realm. And then Strange is like, hang on, I've got an idea. And he, like, does a spell over Cynthia's statued body, and it releases a bunch of light. Victor starts to freak out because he thinks that he's destroying his mother's body. But what happens is that a great light comes down, and it's a sanctified light, because when Cynthia refused to leave Hades, she had redeemed herself for what she had done. And so basically, like, she gets to, her soul goes to heaven. And Mephisto is pissed that he has been tricked, and is so upset that he just, like, blasts them, like, be gone, like, get out of my sight, like, can't believe he's been tricked. So then they're back in the castle, and Boris greets them there as they've known this. And Strange, like, in this beautiful moment, kind of questions Doom. Like, he's like, I don't need your help anymore, Steven. Just leave. Just get out of here. Steven's like, he's like, my mother's free. That's all that matters. And Steven's like, but it came at the cost of her love. And he's like, did you know that? And Doom just walks away and doesn't understand. And Boris's guess as he leaves leads Stephen to leave the castle is basically that he did knowingly know. And so, like, quite a few good, like, twists and turns in this story, and that's kind of how it ends. Like, Doom was able to save his mother, and it's a fantastic 80-page beautiful artwork, fantastic writing by Roger Stern. Can't say enough about Mike Mignola in this. It's great. I would highly recommend, if you do own this, you should give it a read. Just to enjoy it during this week as we lead up to Halloween. If you have never read this, it's fantastic, and it should definitely be in your collection. Great Doctor Doom tale, great Doctor Strange story. Can't say enough good things about it. So that is one of my favorite Halloween season comics. So hope you dug that. If you enjoyed this and the ride, this is what Hank and I do. So please like, comment, and subscribe. I would really appreciate it. And thanks to everyone that already has. I do appreciate it. And I will be back in a couple days with our Wednesday ride up to the shop to talk about a few books that I really enjoyed from last week, there was actually, like, pretty much all of them I enjoyed, which I was surprised by. There were a couple that I was worried were going to be duds, but I wound up really digging them, and to see what we pick up this week. And then, yeah, we'll talk a little bit about Halloween on Wednesday. So thanks for taking this ride with us. Have a great day. Bye.